Everybody at the table ready?
Yes.
Joanne, when you're ready, let me know.
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay, GTV, we'd like to start. I'll give you 10 seconds. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown Planning Board meeting. This is our regular meeting that's scheduled for tonight, Thursday, May 25th, 2023. Normally, we start with a roll call, so we'll start with Colleen.
Colleen Mayu.
Brian Mazer.
Kimberly Peace.
Tim Redmond.
Scott Azana, Town Engineer.
Philip Devanza.
Hollis Adams, Select Board Rep.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm reading our agenda. I don't see the minutes. Do we have minutes to approve tonight? It's not on the list.
Minutes are on the table.
Yeah.
Okay, were they in the packet, Joanne?
No, I believe they were just handed out.
Okay, so we're going to
I
postpone
think they were
minutes.
emailed, but that's
We're going to
okay.
postpone minutes until our next meeting because everyone has to have a chance to read them. So I'll make that decision. Under correspondence action items, Joanne, we have number 1, administrator review for a plan for the gardens at Mount Uncanoonie. Could you please tell the board what's going on with that?
Okay. I just want to write on there so I know what I'm doing here. Okay, so the Gardens of Mount Uncanoonie has been there for several years. They started out as the Uncanoonie Mount Perennial, and they were started up in 1979. And at one point in time, approximately 7 or 8 years ago, they changed over to an event venue mainly for weddings, but they also do smaller events there. There's only a very small building on the site. Whenever they have their events, they put tents up, so it's not something where they have, additional buildings or anything. They're not planning to do anything. So every year that they've been coming in for the event venue, they have gone through the select board for a special event permit because they're open from mid-May until mid-October, so it's just for a few months of the year. And the town considered it a special event, and that's the process that they followed. It would go to the Board of Selectmen for approval. This year, they did get approval, but it was recommended by the town administrator that they at least submit something to the planning board to say, okay, this really requires planning board approval or review versus the select board. So the owner of this site sketched out, using the overhead ortho, she sketched out where things are and exactly what they're used for. So I was suggesting, after reviewing this, that whether the board would like to ask the applicant to submit a waiver of site plan, or whether you want to see an actual site plan. I think given the fact that the business has been up and running for a number of years now and there haven't been any issues, I'm not sure that a full-blown site plan would be required, but that's up to the board. There is parking for approximately 200 vehicles, and she plans to downsize some instead of increasing in size in the next year or so. She's looking to have less people versus more.
Thank you, Joanne. So Collis, as our select board representative, could you tell us about the special event permit and the process that is involved with that?
Well, they apply for a special event every time they have one. But I think the issue here is they're ongoing. It's no more than one event, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's-
They gave them permission to run from mid-May through
Right.
mid-October.
But I think the real issue here is, a lot of issues. Is it zoned properly? Have they ever had a approved site plan? Would it meet site plan regulations as far as parking? All the other things that would be required of anybody who would come in who hadn't previously gotten a site plan for this. It's a fairly significant venue. Parking for several hundred cars if I added them up properly. So I think, to me, that's the threshold issue we need to get by. I mean, just because they haven't come in for one, you know, do we say, oh, well, you flew under the radar for 7 or 8 years, so you're good now? I think, to me, that's a threshold issue, question we need to answer.
Board members have any questions for either Joanne or Collis? Bill?
Well, Collis, do Board of Selectmen still have the issue of the permits for selling Christmas trees?
I don't know, I'd have to look into it.
Because it used to be an annual event that anybody was going to sell Christmas trees. The Lions Club would do it because they sold Christmas trees over at the popcorn stand. Anybody that was selling Christmas trees as an annual event would come in for something.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm asking that, because these other annual events, I mean, they're on, Christmas comes every year, and the Lions Club sells Christmas trees every year. Okay, so I'm just wondering, I'm questioning, what's the difference between ongoing event selling Christmas trees versus an event like
Well,
this?
I'm not sure how
The
it's
process.
pertinent, quite frankly, Phil. I mean, you guys...
Well, it's annual, it's something that goes on every year, why don't you
Wait a
get...
minute, you just partially answered your own question, Phil. The Christmas trees happens once a year.
For a
This
short period of time.
For a short period of time. This happens weekend after weekend after weekend. This is not a special event, in my mind, but...
Christmas trees get sold for 2 to 3 weeks, whole weekend,
Yes.
weekend. I'm just
All
going by
right,
the process.
Well, don't
I'm
turn,
just
let's not argue about it.
questioning the process,
Thank
that's
you.
all.
Other questions?
I guess I would comment that it's my understanding that the site is booked all summer, from the minute they open to the minute they close, and that the events can happen late into the evening. Without a site plan and without them having to go through the channels, we don't have any way to register if something happened that needed to be corrected. And to Collis's point, you know, there's a lot of parking up there. There's a lot of traffic that happens as a result of this, and, you know, it is a local business and local business owners, and, you know, we always want to be supportive of that, but in the right way. What is this zoned, Joanne?
I think it's zoned conservation.
I think most of the mountain is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, this is not an allowed use then?
Would this be considered agritourism? Is this agricultural, so the
Only
light
if,
events?
only
No.
if the
Well,
perennial business was still in business up there, but they no longer have any agricultural element on the
It
property.
is a
that I
wedding,
know
it is a
of.
wedding
Okay.
event
Yeah.
venue.
Okay.
It's an event venue,
Okay.
right.
It's on 15 acres of land, so it's a big site.
Right.
Well, the property's big, but the area that you're using for the venue is not 15 acres, it's not spread out over 15 acres.
No.
So that's not a fair statement.
No,
And have they been to zoning? Do they have anything from zoning?
no. This is the first step.
Well, I just don't want to create a precedent, and I always say that, where we would give this one a green light and say, just because you've been doing it for the last 7 or 8 years, without proper, I wouldn't say proper, without the planning board's look at it, as a business, it would set it up for anyone else that's doing something for multi-years to come in and say, well, you granted it to this applicant, so why are we different? So I concur with Collis's statements, actually.
You know, I don't want to stifle a business either, but we have zoning ordinances and regulations for a reason, and they need to be applied equally across the board. And again, the underlying question is, does it conform to zoning? Would we have required, if it came in as a new application, would we require a site plan review?
Absolutely. We will require a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Okay, so are you looking for a full-blown site plan, engineered, or what are you
I-
looking
it's a-
for?
Nobody said anything yet.
Oh,
We're not
sorry.
even close to that.
It sounded like you were.
It sounds to me like the planning board could also refuse the request to make it a approval from the planning board and kick it back to the Board of Selectmen and let it lay in their lap. Because if we don't agree with what they're doing and they want to continue to do it, that's their business. Because they have the authority to issue special event permits. I personally would not want to just give this a green light.
Could certainly send a memo to the select board saying, we don't understand, you know, how, under what ordinance or regulation this qualifies as a special event as opposed to requiring a site plan review for a commercial business use.
And a special event, in my mind, is more to what you were talking about, Phil. A 2-week or a 3-week period of time where something happens and they require a permit. This is an ongoing business. This is not a special event permit, even.
When the select board has approved this as a special event in the past, would they put restrictions on the number of events or hours, or it was,
And we'd have to research that,
Okay.
Colleen. I don't want to mislead
okay,
anybody.
Well, I think that's a good question that needs to be answered, because whenever we talk about any business, we always talk about hours of
Yeah.
operation. And when is it going to be quiet, and when are the neighbors not going to hear it? Now, granted, I know where it is, and it's in a very secluded area, but still, those rules still apply to everybody.
And we also look at things like parking and safety, you know, this main entrance is, if you know where it is, it's on that rise and that hard curve. I mean, things that we typically would look at, as you know, with a site plan review.
So, depending on what the board wants, Kimberly, would you like to speak?
Yeah, so it looks like in the memo, the town administrator has suggested the site receive approval from the planning board. I think, I agree. I think they need to come in with a site plan. They are running a business and, you know, adhere to our zoning and requirements. And then their staff suggested the planning board find this sketch acceptable as a non-material change with no site plan required. I feel like we're circumventing the process. I mean, maybe if they wanted to use some sort of hand sketch, but, you know, how has this addressed our, I want to see a typical application that addresses, you know, are there wetlands on site? And if they need waivers, they can ask for waivers. They can go through the process itself. To have the site become a business and then it's, you know, vetted, because the other, it's a conservation parcel, so, you know, what do the abutters think of this? Just because we've never had any complaints to anyone from the town doesn't necessarily mean that all of these people necessarily want an ongoing wedding event business in their backyards. So I agree with the town administrator that this should receive approval from the planning board, and I believe that they should come in with a site application. And you know, should they choose to submit this as a modified site plan, I may be okay, but I'd still want to see them fill out all of the parts of the application. Like, there's no wetlands on here, there's no topo on here, there's no, you know, if you need soil waivers for that, let's go through this process.
And part of the recommendation says that acceptable is a non-material change. A non-material change to what?
Right, I don't
Yeah,
believe that what
that
they've done out there
implies
is a non-material change to that
implies a
property.
non-material change to a approved site plan, which we don't have.
Right, right.
There's also one item that's long-term. Should we just grant the green light to this, and this person should decide to retire in 5 years and sell it? Who knows what else could happen up there? You could end up with once it's an approved business site, without any planning review, they can do whatever they want up there.
Right.
So to me, I think we should kick it back to the Board of Selectmen for more answers. And should they want a approved site plan, they would have to come in and make application.
And if there were something in the future, Tim, if I may kind of build on that,
Yep.
somebody could say, well, you turned a blind eye to it once. Why can't you turn a blind eye to my operation?
So,
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
they have parking for 200 plus cars from what I understand. And that's a lot of impervious that we don't even know if they have site drainage or anything. And being in the conservation area, that is a concern. I mean, we just had a quarter-acre lot subdivision require a full drainage report, and if you let this go, it seems kind of...
Yeah, I would also say over time, this site has had improvements made to it. You know, full knowledge, my children have at certain times worked for the people who run this operation. So, and that's the only reason I've driven up there multiple years in a row, and the site has changed. And you're right, there's been increased development, gravel parking, you know, it's it feels like it's time for this to come in and be a real true business with a site plan and go through the process.
I guess that raises a bit of the question on, how far back are we going to ask them to, is there a certain amount of development that had been grandfathered, was in place prior to site plan regulations, or at what point have they, added to the gravel parking or made improvements that now they need to meet current stormwater regulations? Are we trying to get the whole site brought into compliance, or are we kind of looking at this as we can have a site plan that, documents, and this is the line in the sand where now anything else that you're doing going forward? So that might be something for maybe a conceptual discussion with the owner as they, start to prepare the site plan, that we can give them some guidance on what might be reasonable or anticipated.
So let's kick this to get this moving on here. So does the board concur that we should ask the Board of Selectmen for some more information regarding the questions that were raised in the memo, if that's what seems appropriate, or
Well, have they issued the special event permit for this summer?
they already have?
They have.
So they're good to go for the whole season. So action on this tonight is not necessary, in my opinion.
Well, but it's in front of, I think you're correct. I think we need to tell someone, we've discussed it, and we feel like, other than the special event permit, is that enough for the summer? So then in the future, if they want to continue in operation, it has to come back before us, or?
Right.
Right, Collis, is that right? They've given a green light for this summer and,
Yeah, that's my understanding.
okay.
So what I would recommend is that I contact the owner, advise her what the comments were, and then give her the choice. She could come in here with a conceptual, which would be the best idea, just to talk and see what it is that you need. And then she could then go ahead and hire somebody to do a site plan. She wasn't opposed to doing one, she just, she's very, very busy. So this way you could give her some advice on what it is that you're concerned about.
Well, I think you should give her the advice, Joanne. You listen to the conversation.
Okay,
There's no
so
need
you
to bring
don't
her in
need to
here in
speak
front of
with
the
her?
board.
Okay, fine.
It's
Then we'll
not
just-
that we're concerned, we want to see a site plan, it's a business.
Yeah, so we'll just have her hire somebody and we'll talk to them.
And if the memo is factual, it says the town administrator suggested the site receive approval from us,
Right, that's what I
Planning
was
board.
noting, right.
because it no longer qualifies as a special event. So kind of answers their own question.
Okay.
Right, because he felt it was a special event in the beginning, but now it's like somebody here said, it's like for
It's repetitive.
several months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want to speak for the whole board, so I think we should have a straw poll on this matter. And I'll start with Colleen. Have Joanne contact the owner and make the request. Is that what you think is best?
Yes.
Brian?
Well, I'm gonna recuse myself with this, there's a connection there, but whatever the board thinks is best, I'll,
All right, let's
Support it.
just start off this. If you ever need to recuse yourself, you should do it prior to any discussions and not in the middle of a discussion, just for future knowledge. Let us know in advance, and that way I wouldn't call on you to do that.
Sure.
All right, Kimberly?
I agree with what you said.
And I agree with contacting the owner. Phil?
I thought we were gonna send it back to the Board of Selectmen.
Joanne just said she's gonna contact the owner, and
I'm not sure what the Board of
That's
Selectmen
what
would do
I
with
thought
it
the
at this
board wanted to
point.
go back to the Board of Selectmen. That's what I was
so
agreeing.
then let's do that as the first step. Send it
Yeah.
back to the Board of Selectmen
But-
for clarification, and then on to the property owner.
But I guess I'm confused, for clarification on what?
I guess clarification that the board agrees, I think the town administrator made the determination that this doesn't qualify as a special event, maybe just confirmation that the
So-
selectmen agree it's not a special event.
Well, I thought the
assumed-
questions were, what is a special event? That was what we wanted to know, what was a special?
No, I
What
don't-
qualifies as a special event?
I don't think this does
Yeah.
qualify for a
But
special.
we don't know.
Well, they've already stated it doesn't qualify for
I
But
any.
we don't know what the qualifications are.
I had assumed that the Board of Selectmen discussed this. Do you know, Collis?
No, I do not.
So maybe this just came from
Yeah.
the
So
administrator.
this needs to be on
Okay.
Looks like.
the board's agenda first.
Okay.
Let them talk about it first. All right, and Carlos, I didn't ask you, are you in favor of sending it back to the board?
Yes,
And then possibly to the owner?
yes.
Okay, so at this time, Joanne,
Okay.
It's not a unanimous decision, but it's the majority of the board that thinks that it should go back to the board for
That's fine.
future. Put that in.
We have a few other things, but we could take them up at the end of the meeting.
Are they on the agenda here?
Um,
Are they on something
No,
else that I
they're
don't
not.
have? They're not on the agenda?
No,
Okay,
one
well,
was
they'll go
the
to the end of the meeting.
land acquisition.
We'll go to the
They
end of the
came in
meeting.
later.
Yep, we'll put that to the end of the meeting. We'll get the applicants in and out of here because they were here first. Okay, first application tonight is Old Business, map 34, lot 61. Joanne, could you please run that for the board?
This is new business,
Yes.
isn't it?
It says old on the top.
Yeah, I know, but I think it's new.
You got these backwards? on our
Yeah, I
agenda?
think all three of these applications are new.
Yeah, they are.
So the agenda is incorrect, that's a new business,
Yeah.
and old business is nothing.
Okay.
So it's new business, map 34, lot 61.
This property is located at 8 West Union Street. The owner, excuse me, the owner's family has owned this house for many, many years. The house, it was constructed in 1880. Recently, the town has been doing some work on West Union. And,
We have work coming.
oh, you have work coming.
Yeah.
And they're installing sidewalks and curbing. And the people who own this home had been parking their vehicles next to their house on a grassy area or on the street in front of their house. But because this street is only about 20 feet wide, there's, definitely a problem parking your car there. So they've been trying to keep the cars, they have 4 vehicles, and they've been trying to keep them on the grassy area as much as possible. So when this work happens, they will no longer be able to do that. So they contacted Public Works for a driveway permit, and they were advised to come to this board because the driveway would be too close to the existing property line. They need to be 10 feet away, and I believe they're only 5 feet. But if you look at the little map that I attached here on page 4, you'll see that the next property, so they would be parking on the right side of their home, and the property line is close by. You'll see that the house of the property next door is I think it's 118 feet away, 118. So it's quite a distance, and their driveway is on the opposite side, so it wouldn't interfere with anything. So basically, they need a waiver and they need a conditional use permit. The waiver would be for the difference of the 5 feet versus the required 10, and the conditional use permit would be for having a second driveway without having ample frontage. Their property only has 105 feet of frontage, where 250 is needed in order to have 2 driveways. So they're actually here. There's no regional impact, and the application is complete.
So I need a motion to that effect from someone.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we found that the application is complete, will have no regional impact, and it's ready to be heard.
I'll second it.
And what about what about other waivers requested, Joanne?
So there is one waiver, which is for the driveway being
Setback.
the 5-foot setback versus the required 10-foot.
So
And
would
then
you-
there's the conditional use permit.
So would you amend your waiver to include waivers for acceptance purposes only?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and
That's
my
what you
second
wanted
is
to
good for
do.
that.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion to find that it's complete, ready for review, no regional impact, and the waivers for acceptance purposes only. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Okay. So, any questions for staff to begin with, from board members? Okay, so we'll go to DPW representative now. Scott, would you give us a report from Public Works?
Sure. So this actually stemmed from, we were out on West Union, I'm sure all of you have seen the poles being replaced throughout town.
Yeah.
So currently on West Union, we have a sidewalk that is actually separate from the road. It's supposed to be a grass strip, but it's a dirt strip between the sidewalk and the road. It's approximately 4 to 5 feet. I think it may vary a little. And the sidewalk itself, the paved portion, that varies as well, maybe 3 to 4 feet. It's not very wide. So when they set the new poles, the existing poles were in that strip, that dirt strip, and they actually set the poles back behind the existing poles to the point where our sidewalk plow could no longer fit by. So we met Eversource on site, and actually myself, DPW Director Jacobs, and other engineering staff had a discussion, and we decided that if we have them move their newly placed poles to basically the edge of the right-of-way, we can then move a new sidewalk and have it be adjacent to the road and no longer have that strip. So currently with the strip, I left this out, there's no curb. So right now, lots of people park in that dirt area. So as soon as we introduce that curb, there's no more really on-street parking there, and it's a narrow road as it is. So we suggested, Mr. Tabor came out, saw us, we spoke with him, we suggested he go through this now. Right now we're shooting for 2025 for this project, but we all know how some of these things work, and it may not be 2025. So we suggested he apply for the driveway permit. We would deny him because he didn't meet these two aspects, and then come in here and present it to you. I spoke with Adam, Director Jacobs, and he and I don't have any opposition to this. It's not a high traveled road. It's low speed. There's a lot of driveways that are close to the property lines on this portion of West Union. So we felt it was, conforms with the neighborhood, and it's kind of, the town's work is kind of creating a hardship for them. So that's my report.
So I'm looking at these diagrams we've got, it shows the new sidewalk in front of this applicant's house. But then if you look to the parking space on the last page, there are no more sidewalks beyond that house. Are you going to end the sidewalk in front of that house?
No, so the sidewalk will run all the way down West Union. We have high hopes to get it all the way down to Lions Field, but it's going to be, that might be tricky. We'll figure that out in design stage. This isn't even in design yet, so the sidewalk will be all the way from Main Street to hopefully Lions Field, possibly even all the way out to Pleasant Street.
Okay. Board members have questions for DPW? All right. And questions for staff?
If you want to see the conditional use criteria, it is in the packet for this application. There's no page numbers, but it's in there after the fee schedule.
So Scott, I'm going to come back with another question for you for Public
Sure.
Works. If this is going to be this applicant's dilemma, is this going to be the dilemma for all the rest of the people living on the street?
It could be. There's some driveways that are a little longer. I believe there is family living in the house with them, so they do have more than just two cars at this house. The house to the right of them is an apartment complex that actually has like a small parking lot. A few of the houses across, so that's the small parking lot.
We've
there.
heard from one other person so far that they may be coming forward.
Okay, I thought it could be the case because a lot of these houses are right on top of the road, and once we put that sidewalk in, it's so the other side of the road will have a bituminous curb that technically can be mounted if people were to park that side. I think we're gonna have no parking signs on the sidewalk side, but not the other. Like I said, we're still in design, so none of this is fully ironed out, or we haven't even started design. It really just got kicked off by this, the poles.
And what happens if this never happens? That's possible.
It's possible, but it's a slim possibility.
Okay. Just wanna hear
Because
that from
because
you.
where they just planted the new poles are dead smack in the middle of the sidewalk, so we have to do something now, because,
Well, it wouldn't stop you from putting a sidewalk in without granite curbing.
What about underground utility?
Okay.
Scott, how long is a driveway permit valid for? So if they get this permit now,
I don't,
is there a,
it's in the packet. I don't know the answer to that, but I'll see
I
if
think
it's.
they're waivable at the end.
Well, I think, doesn't it convey with the house? So once it's
No.
granted, it goes with the house forever?
I don't
Well,
believe
if
so.
it's installed, I think you're asking once
like,
it's granted
if you
to
issue
when.
the
Yeah.
permit, like,
And
do
you
they have
can
a
waive
time
it.
frame to build it?
Right, you
Just-
can waive
okay.
the,
I'd
Public
want-
Works can waive that.
It would make, okay, as long as Public Works can waive that,
Well,
and that's
I
fine.
would just,
Yeah.
I don't know about a new drive, because this would be considered a new driveway.
This is a new driveway.
I don't know about a new one, like if you do a repaving, and you get that, and there was $100, there used to be $100 fee for that.
There's
But it
still
was
for a
waived.
new one.
Right, but if you made a modification was changed.
To an existing driveway.
Right, to an existing driveway.
I'll look it up, but I'm not sure.
I
Joanne,
just
could you
wouldn't
just,
want a permit to
Oh,
be
sorry.
issued and then not, then he has to get it done in a year, and we're not doing a project for
Well,
3 years.
let me, so, I can't remember the address, but it's the cow cuddling place on, the back road.
Right.
So, they recently used the driveway permit from 2015 to construct that one that was there, so I guess we don't really have.
Declaration.
Yeah.
all right. Joanne, just, oh, I'm sorry.
I don't see anything
I-
on the permit.
I didn't see
I was
it
just
either.
gonna say that I've been down this road a lot, because the kids played soccer for a million years to Lions Club, and I think any additional allowance we can give these homeowners to get the cars off the street is an improvement, because that was a really narrow street, and it might not be heavily trafficked during the day, but they're on a Saturday morning from 8 a.m. to like 2 p.m. This is a highway, and any chance we get to get the cars off of that road, I think is an improvement for everyone.
Joanne, could you just read the fire department comments into the record, please?
Sure.
Page 5.
The fire department, number one, the fire department does not encourage or support multiple separate driveways on a single lot, as it can lead to problems locating incident scenes in an emergency. If the applicant is allowed a second driveway, the display of the address, street number, and apartment designation of the dwelling units will be reviewed by the fire department.
Okay, so there's that to be considered. All right. Do board members have anything else that they want to talk to staff or DPW about before we ask the applicants to come up?
Me.
Please?
Joanne, I just have a question, looking at page 4 in our packet. There are these waivers and acceptance for review, and then items 1 through 4, and then on page 5, number 6, no conditional use permit is required?
No.
Isn't this a conditional use permit request?
A conditional use, that's for the waiver, that has to do with the waiver.
Oh,
That's for the 10-foot versus the 5-foot, but they do need one for the second driveway because it doesn't have the ample
So they're
frontage.
different from the two
So it's a
explanations
different
are
request.
independent of
Gotcha.
each other.
Yeah.
okay, very good.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll ask the applicants to come up, please. And would you please identify yourself for the record?
My name is Michael Tabor. It's my wife Andrea. We live at 8 West Union Street. Our family does have 4 cars, and we're playing musical chairs with the cars because my truck is usually parked in the back, and I have to move all 3 cars out to the front, which is now available. But once the curb goes in, I'm not going to be able to park out front to move the cars in and out. So that's why we're applying for the second driveway.
Anything else you'd like to add? I'm not putting you on the spot, just make sure you have your
The
chance.
only other thing I could think of is that is the true main entrance to the house, and we'd like to start using that entrance again if we can park on that second driveway.
Okay. And it'll be constructed as your diagram shows, it'll be only 12 feet wide, leaving the
Yes.
5-foot separation to the
Yes.
property line. I'm gonna put that on the record. Board members have any questions for the applicants? Joanne, I'm sorry, somebody?
Nope.
Nope. Joanne, let's handle them one at a time, so let's talk about the waiver first. Could you please make sure it's clear, and then we can hopefully have a resolution on the waiver.
Yes, so, excuse me, they need a waiver from Appendix A, Section 8C5 of the Development Regulations, to allow this driveway to be 5 feet from the side property line, where 10 feet is required.
Any discussion on the waiver from board members?
I would just note that the applicant's application includes their addressing 15.4.1.4, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 requirements that are needed to address a waiver. I've reviewed them and it looks like their answers are reasonable.
Does the board members all have that in the application?
Yep.
Does anybody want to waive the reading of the,
I'll make a motion to waive the reading.
I'll second. Can we approve the waiver and waive the motion?
no, we're gonna do first, one at a time. So a motion to waive the reading. Okay, so there's a motion to waive the reading of 15.4.1 through 4.6.
I seconded.
Phil. Anybody want to have a discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes. Okay, now we need to discuss the waiver itself. If there's no discussion, somebody make a motion.
I'll make a motion to grant the waiver request from the development regulations, specifically Appendix A, Section 8.C.5.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion to grant the waiver?
Do we usually always do that before a public hearing?
You know, you're right, Phil.
Oh, yeah.
I have got ahead of myself in trying to speed this meeting up. So we've already made a motion to waive the reading, that's okay.
So
That's not
just table it.
That's not out of, so we'll table the motion to grant the waiver until I
Motion to
open.
table.
Motion to table by Phil.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye for the motion to table.
Aye.
Okay. So at this time, folks, I'm gonna ask if there's anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this application. So we'll open a public hearing at this time. Is anybody here that would like to speak in regards to this application? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Now we can go back to the motion from the waiver.
Motion to remove waiver from the table.
Oh, you gotta do a motion to, that's how
We
we do-
voted to put it on the table, we gotta take it off the table. So I'll make a motion. Take
To
it
remove?
off the table.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion granted.
Now I'll make the motion to grant the waiver request from the development regulations, specifically Appendix A, Section 8.C.5.
I seconded it.
And Brian seconded that one. Okay, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes. So John, let's go on to the other half of the request, is for a conditional use permit?
Conditional use permit, And this is for a second driveway where the frontage requirement is 250 feet and the applicant has 105 feet.
So that's about the driveway separation,
No, this is the frontage of the
on the
property.
frontage.
It's actually 115 feet, but
Oh, okay. Not 105.
Still doesn't make 200,
No.
or 250, whatever.
Fifty, yeah.
Nice try. Okay. So what's the procedure for this conditional use permit, Joanne, at this time? Do we have to have
So-
discussion, we have to have a discussion on it?
So they have submitted an application, and they're listed the criteria, and they've answered the criteria. It's in the packet where the
Yep.
application is
Right here.
on the front. It's several pages in. It's after the
Oh, it's
fee
after the
schedule.
Yep, handwritten.
There we go, 7.4.2 from the zoning ordinance.
You see it?
Yep,
Uh,
it's after this page.
Okay. All right, so, I guess we'll just go through but we should go through these, because we always do when we have applicants here, so we don't cut any corners. So we're gonna ask you folks, Mr. Tabor, the question, is this use specifically authorized in the ordinance as a conditional use?
yes,
Thank you. If completed as proposed, the development in its proposed location will comply with all requirements of the section with the specific condition standards established in the ordinance for this particular use.
yes.
Yes. You have your answers in front of you so you can speak to these? You want to take mine? We need your glasses, so you can see
My
them.
glasses.
Me too. The use will be compatible with the neighborhood and adjoining abutting uses in which it's to be located.
Yes,
And your explanation was due to the older neighborhood and size of the lots, is possible problems parking throughout the neighborhood.
correct.
Okay. The use will not have substantial adverse impact on vehicular or pedestrian safety.
Well, it should improve the vehicle impact on the street as far as backing out of the driveways and parking out front.
Thank you. The use will not have a substantial adverse impact on the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhood.
No adverse impact.
Thank you. And the use will be adequately, well, this is something, use is adequately serviced by necessary public utilities, which is not actually a fair question for this, but your answer is yes. Okay. We've got through the questions for the conditional use permit. Any discussion on the conditional use permit with the board?
Mr. Chair, I would just add that I know the fire department doesn't encourage or support multiple separate driveways, but I think in this instance, having the additional driveway is probably an improvement for public safety, getting a fire truck or getting a emergency vehicle down that street. So anything we can do to get cars off the side of the street, I think makes sense in
I
this
think it
instance.
also is more applicable to larger lots that have two driveways where you wouldn't know which one to use to access the
Yeah,
house. This is
yeah.
pretty apparent which
Yeah.
driveway
Absolutely.
they would use to get to the house. So this really is just sort of boilerplate stuff, I believe, from fire. They will probably want to talk to you about making sure they understand where your house number is going to be located, which is
Fine.
probably right where it's going to be and right where it's going to stay. Okay. All right, we probably should have any more discussion on the conditional use permit,
Just have a procedural question.
please?
Joanne, it says we're addressing the conditions from the zoning ordinance, section 7.4, but they actually answered 15.4.1.4 again. So they answered the same questions. I don't think there's a problem with it, but is that correct?
The conditional use permit, the questions don't change. It's just repeated for each, wherever you need a conditional use permit throughout the ordinance, those are the questions that are asked. Sometimes it doesn't really apply, but that's how.
Right.
Were the
how it is.
questions then under the waiver? So 15.4.1.4 is also answered for waiver request?
No, the waiver request is in the packet. It's under the same packet that you've been looking at. It's like page 4. That's the one from 8.8C, Appendix A, Section 8C5.
Right, so in here we have Appendix A, Section 8C5, and then we have 15.4.1.4 4.1.4. And then over here, we have the other ordinance, and it's the same questions.
If you, a few pages ahead of that, there's the
There's
waiver
the
checklist
actual
requirement.
waiver.
Gotcha.
So I think we kind of duplicated the
Just
waiver.
want to make sure we're addressing what.
They did some extra homework on the waiver request.
Are we on solid ground right now?
Yeah,
Good.
The waiver, it's not
not
really a
perfect, but it's
question, it
great.
just says, list the reasons for your waiver request.
right.
And he did that.
All right,
So I make a motion that we grant the conditional use permit based on the answers the applicant provided for section 7.4.2.
Second?
Colleen, you second that?
Yes, please.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of granting the conditional use permit, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Was it,
There was a condition, a driveway permit from DPW is required.
well, they,
We need to amend that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that was.
I mean,
not my
that seems pretty
condition.
standard.
they know that, right?
Okay.
Yes,
all
they
right.
know that.
Doesn't have to be part of our record.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, folks, you are on your way to a new driveway.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, Joanne, our second new application is map 35, lot 52.
Okay, this property is located at 142 Elm Street in the residential 1 zone. They are on Glen Lake. The application was found complete with no regional impact. Joe Wickert is here representing the applicant. They would like to reconstruct, you probably remember this one, it wasn't that long ago, where the family came in and they owned several lots along Glen Lake, and they were doing some lot line adjustments to clean things up because of the way the lots were constructed in the first place. They were kind of strange, and they were trying to fix some things. And so they were able to do that, and now they're looking to demolish the home that was built in 1930 and reconstruct a little bit further away from Glen Lake, but still not meeting the 100-foot surface water setback. And but the improvement will be that they will be constructing a new septic system because currently that home and the one next door were sharing a septic. So they're actually improving things along the lake. They
And-
did receive,
And if I could add, Joanne,
Sure.
at last night's Conservation Commission,
Well,
they
that's
also
gonna-
agreed to include infiltration trenches
was gonna-
alongside the driveways.
I was gonna actually ask for the conservation's comments, so
oh yeah,
we'll get to
sorry
that
about
thing.
that.
It's okay. Because I know I saw that in an email.
Yeah,
Yes, they did recommend.
and they agreed to that last night.
And they had,
I
our
was
conservation had
recommending
no
that as
issues
well.
with this application.
Right.
And they added infiltration trenches, requesting to add infiltration trenches?
Yeah, alongside the driveway, both sides of the driveway.
Okay.
They agreed to that.
Oh, the applicant was there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Or do you have anything else to add, Joanne, that I've not given you time to
I
tell
was
us?
just about to say a variance was granted to allow the reduced side setback, so they've already been to the zoning board.
Okay.
They also did submit a functions and values report, and that was done by Aspen Environmental. The lot is serviced by municipal water and private septic.
And who reviews the function and values report?
Typically, it's Kimberly,
I read it.
Conservation
Well,
Commission.
not in,
but the Conservation Commission did receive a copy.
but do we generally have reviews of reports, or do we just accept them at face value?
Well, I mean, they're stamped by a certified wetland scientist, so.
Well, that's great. Except that we probably should have people looking at this stuff.
And
I
the
mean,
Conservation Commission does look at it.
We do.
Right, they do.
And ask
Well,
questions.
somebody's given it a once-over. All right,
Oh, I just have a question, Joanne.
please.
Did they get the shoreland permit yet?
I don't believe they have that, no.
So that would be a condition of approval, right, Joanne, if you, when you wrote your conditions of approval up?
Yes.
actually, it's not on your list. Suggested conditions for approval, I see 3. I don't see,
Yeah, we'll add that.
we'll add them. Okay. All right, any other questions for staff from board members? Do DPW have anything to report on this?
Actually, I had a comment to include infiltration trenches along the driveway as well. There's currently not a driveway where they're adding one. You can see on the plans, there's like a shed, there's an outbuilding there. The new driveway will go out to Elm Street from there. And I wanted those to take any water that, from the property with the new impervious there, to not send it out to Elm Street, because it's pretty flat on Elm Street through that section. So that was my reasoning behind requesting those. Other than that, they'll need a driveway permit to do that driveway, and those are my only 2 comments.
Anybody else?
We need to find the application complete.
With no regional impact.
No regional
So we need a
impact.
motion.
I make a motion, we find the application complete for discussion and no regional impact. Waive the 65-day clock. Or request the applicant to waive the 65-day clock.
I'll second that.
And there are no waivers requested, Joanne?
There's one waiver.
So waivers for acceptance purposes only?
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
And we're gonna ask them to waive the 65-day clock as well, Joanne?
Yes.
That was in the motion.
If you get to the point where you're not approving it, then yes.
Okay, it's been a motion by Kimberly for all the things we just discussed. Any discussion of the motion? Phil, you seconded that?
Yes, I did.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes. So at this time, if we have nothing else for staff or DPW, we'll ask the applicant to please come up and give their name for the record and their plan. So is anybody in the gallery trying to see that plan? Anybody here to see this plan other than us? Because we'll have them turn it if you can't see it, that's all. You folks good? Oh, so I guess you've already seen the plan.
Yeah, we're the applicants.
All right, thank you. Okay, so, Joe?
Yep. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. So I'm Joe Wickard. I'm here tonight on behalf of Kathleen and Sir John Illich, who are the owners of 142 Elm Street. So Joanne kind of briefed you on it. We were here in '22. We moved some lot lines around. These lots were originally created by the Glen Lake Campers Association plan from 1968. It's a tough plan to work from. Has really unique lines. A lot of times we found that there are encroachments, and that's what ended up happening in '22. So Kathleen's parents, the Barnards, own, I think it's 134, 140, which is the lot directly to the west, and used to own 142. So Kathleen and Sean have lived at 142 for a while. After the lot line adjustment was resolved, they purchased the property, and they currently live in, I think I wrote it down, it's about a 700 or 800 square foot house. It's a relatively small house, and they live there with their 2 young kids. So they like to, they looked at adding on to and renovating that house. Structurally, it's a problem just because it's a 1930s camp. So after kind of discussing it with some builders and some contractors, it was decided that the best way to move forward was a new structure. So that's what we're here for this evening. So had we not done the lot line adjustment in '22, we probably wouldn't have been here, because I think the lot predated the requirement for the 100-foot setback. But because we moved those lot lines, we are now subject to it. Joanne mentioned we went to the zoning board for a variance. That variance was for the side yard setbacks, where we have 10 and 11 and a half to the building, and I think 6'8" or 8'6", I'm sorry, to the deck. Those were granted, I think that was in April. And we did meet Conservation Commission last night. So the only thing Collis had mentioned, we had talked about ditches on both sides of the driveway. We agreed to a ditch. I thought we agreed to one side just because on the east side of the driveway, when we had talked about it, my recollection was we had talked, if we go on the east side of the driveway, we'd have to go like north of the existing septic system, and, you know, it might be better to put it on the west side of the driveway. You know, typically it's a 10 or 12-foot driveway, we're not gonna put a crown on it.
Yeah, so pitch it towards the
Right,
trench.
so that's what we were thinking, is we just do a ditch on one side and we'll tip it a little bit to
That
there.
works.
So
we-
which side,
Works
Joe?
for me anyway.
I think it would work better on the west, because it's not gonna interfere with the septic system.
I said, let's not talk east and west. Which side in
I'm sorry,
relation to the
right
septic
hand,
system? Opposite side of the
Opposite
septic?
side of the septic system,
Okay.
yes.
Aren't there DES requirements ditching within certain distance to a
Yeah.
septic
Correct, but it
system?
won't be, this ditch won't intercept seasonal high water table or anything, it's just gonna be a
Surface
stone
runoff.
ditch to take it. So we did, I think we've done 3 or 4 test pits out here, it's pure sand. So we're not gonna have, once the water goes off of the pavement, it's really not gonna go far before it gets, it percolates into the ground. It was brought up at the Concom about the driveway, and we had mentioned that I thought your standard policy was you had to break 10 feet in to prevent the water from running, sort of sheet flowing onto the road.
Yeah, so the detail in the driveway permit, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, we're good with that, and we'll certainly make that, make all those things happen. So there is, what we had proposed was the existing house is 66 feet off the lake. The proposed house would be 68. It's marginally better, but it's not worse. The houses and the lots obviously predate the 100-foot setback, and just with the way this lot is configured, really the only spot we can put a house is sort of where the lot's the widest. And that's kind of towards the water side, so that's what we've looked at. We had a set of house plans that were inside, in the packet, so hopefully you have those. There's a 45 square foot increase of area in the buffer. I think we go from 1075 to 1120. You know, we are proposing there's a 2-car attached, enclosed or attached, I don't know what the term is, I'm brain locking. There's a garage built into the house, so, you know, there won't be, cars won't be outside hopefully anymore, although that was also a point of discussion at the Concom, they certainly could be. As was mentioned, that 140 and 142 currently share a septic system. The septic system predates state approval, best we can tell. So as part of this approval, part of this application, we would build a new septic system for the proposed new residents, and also we're going to put a new septic system for 140, which is the lot to the west, the Barnard's house. We're going to move, that septic system is going to go, if you drove by the property, there's like a little island of green in there, and it would go in front of that. So we're moving both systems further away from the lake.
Are you moving onto their prospective lots though as well?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So there won't be any shared driveways, each house would have their own individual approved septic system. You know, and in order for us to move forward, you know, we need this reduction in the 100-foot setback. Aaron from Aspen Environmental had prepared the function and values report, and you know, I think he went through and on pages 2 and 3 kind of summarizes about its there would be no reduction in the habitats, or this should be meets the spirit of your ordinance. There was discussion last night about possibly an issue with the dam, but I guess that's further down the road. But you know,
What,
they were talking about removing a dam. I don't know if it's an Eversource issue, but there was some.
Closing the dam that's on the lake.
Glen Lake Dam?
Yes.
Yeah, because DES wants fish ladders in dams, and that dam has a fish ladder inside of it already, if I'm not
I don't
mistaken.
believe
No, it
does.
doesn't.
Well, it shows it at the Historical Society.
Not germane to this discussion.
But anyhow, so it was just brought up as a
I doubt if
point
they're
of-
gonna tear that dam down.
So that's, the only reason to bring it up, we are aware of it, the Conservation Commission made us aware of it, in the applicants and their in-laws had also been, to one of the meetings. So I don't wanna go too long on it, be happy to answer any questions you may have, and we can go from there.
Collis, the question I have is, what did the Conservation Commission agree to last night in terms of these infiltration ditches? Did they agree to both sides or one side?
Well, I think the intent is met, Tim. The intent was to direct the runoff from the driveway into an infiltration trench. Whether it's a crown driveway and it goes to two ditches on, one on each side, or if it's super elevated to one side or the other, as long as it gets from the driveway into an infiltration trench.
And for the record, Joe, what are you proposing?
We are proposing, infiltration trench on the northwest side of the proposed driveway.
And it'll be super elevated and all the
Correct.
water from the
We'll make
driveway
sure-
will shed to the one side only?
Yes.
Okay.
The notes from Patty only say recommends infiltration trench be installed along the driveway. Doesn't say which one or both.
At least it's clear now. Just as long as it's on the record, that's all we need.
And I think there are 3 conditions where we also committed to dry wells for the gutters on the proposed house and the new septic systems.
Any questions for the applicants, for Joe, please?
So Joe, just to clarify, the existing house is within the 100-foot, and then it looks like part of it will be, you said there is an increase in the property?
We have a 45 square foot increase in the buffer.
Okay. And then my second question, will the new driveway eliminate the use of the gravel driveway that is shown that is along the lake?
No, that is further to the west. This is like this house here uses it for access, and I believe the
Just an
party to
easement,
the
right?
east also may use it for whatever. So it's not necessarily theirs only to decide.
Okay. So there's no change in the use of that gravel driveway?
No.
Okay.
It would eliminate the gravel to the east or left if you're looking at it from the road of the Barnard's house. So
Yeah.
we'll clean that up, and it'll sort of take away some of the impervious area in front of the Barnards when they reconfigure that driveway, because it won't be shared.
Okay.
I have a question, Tim.
Yeah, go ahead.
Joe, I see the 77 or 71 setback and the 68,
Yeah.
but I don't see the 100-foot setback line.
Yeah, that didn't, we had this conversation. It shows up better on the pre-condition. You can see it right here, and it cuts through. When we put it on the new house, the text for the house is kind of obscuring it, but it runs like right here.
I finally found it. It's over here. There is a 100-foot line,
Yeah.
right on the left-hand side of the figure. And it looks like someone's
Oh,
trying to
I
stick-
do see it
Yeah,
now.
right there. It is
Okay,
right
It just
there.
doesn't carry all the way through the site.
yeah.
No.
Joe, where is the high water mark on your map? I see edge of water, but is that, when and what time of year is that the edge of the water?
So I believe under DES rules, we have to use the reference line. And the reference line is not necessarily the high water mark, it's more of, because it's impounded lake, I believe it's intended to be full lake value, right? And so if you go into here, it's right here, this 274.9, or it's almost a 275 contour. That's the published elevation of Glen Lake, and that's what we've made all our measurements from.
Okay.
So the gravel driveway that Kimberly was questioning you about, that, other than a flood, would normally not be underwater?
Correct.
Okay.
Joe, if I remember correctly, there's like a Glen Lake Campers Association easement for that.
Yep.
That, right?
So that sits here, and it runs the 40-foot wide. So.
Oh, no, I meant the gravel driveway down at the
Oh, I'm
bottom.
sorry, yeah, there is an easement for
Okay.
here as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought so.
That was more private as opposed to the association.
Oh, okay. I just thought I remembered that from the
Yep.
lot line adjustment.
Any other board members?
And
Phil.
we will need a copy of the shoreline permit.
Phil, please.
I have a question, Joe, and I hope you can answer it, because it mentions that was prepared by you. On Aspen's cover page, On the bulleted items below the fourth one, because that was kind of my question, shown as having a 100-foot buffer on plan prepared by Mr. Weichert. Since he has based the setback on the reference line elevation, is that line?
Yes, that's that 274.9.
Right, okay. I thought that's what it probably was, but I just wasn't sure because I kind of couldn't find it. Thank you.
Joe, the only thing I'd like you to consider here is, because the lake is a sensitive area, and because you're gonna do a whole new site, you show a typical detail for a silt fence on the low side. I think we need a little more than a typical silt fence, because if you do have a big rain or a wash, it's gonna knock that over. We know it all does. So maybe you could include staked hay bales in addition with the silt fence as the erosion protection on that site.
So you want to tell them, or you want me to tell
It's
them?
kind of like deja vu all over again, isn't it, Joe? Yeah,
Why,
we talked about that last
Tell them
night.
last night?
So,
We talked about silt socks, yeah.
right,
Silt socks are ineffective in my book. They're only this big around,
Yeah.
and they lay this high off the ground, and water overtops them like that.
Very effective.
Hay bales are 2 feet tall.
that's fine, we can call for
And
it.
never installed properly.
Well, Joe knows how to install them, so he'll do it
So,
right.
no, Joe doesn't install hay bales. So, nor do I inspect them. So, I mean, I think we did have this conversation, and I think when Aaron was at the Conservation Commission meeting, you know, the cost for the silt sock is more expensive than for the fence. If the board wants hay bales, we can put hay bales there. I thought what we so this is a pretty good sand, so I believe those stakes are gonna go down there and should set well. A lot of times when we see the issue with the, everything washing over, it's the stakes they're not driven in very far. You know, they're only get down 3-4 inches, you get a little pressure and it knocks them over. But if the board wants some hay bales next to the silt fence, that's
Staked
fine.
hay bales on the back side of the silt
Yep.
fence will hold it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll include that on, we can include that as in condition approval, but you'll have to show it on a final plan. Because this all says draft on my copy.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Kimberly had asked, we put draft on it because we have not submitted to the shoreline. And I didn't want to submit to the shoreline without knowing I had my variance and reduction in setback.
Okay.
So once we get that, we'll finalize everything, we can change the details on that, and, you know, we'll submit a copy. We can submit a final copy to Joanne, but then when we do submit the shoreline, the town's also gonna get a copy. I believe the Conservation Commission is gonna review that as well.
Anybody else?
I'll just add that I did review the functions and values assessment that was provided, and I agree with the assessment that it won't have a negative impact on the functions and values. Lakes are tricky, and they're actually not fit very well with what we've written those intentions for, but I think they addressed it well, and I agree with the conclusion.
Thank you. Any more questions for the applicant? Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anybody wishes to come and speak on this application that's a resident or a neighbor, please come up to the table. It's your time. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. So I jotted down 3 conditions in our discussion. I jotted down beyond the 3 that Joanne has on our page 8. I added infiltration trenches will be placed along the edges of the driveway and shown on the plan.
That's actually condition number 1.
Excuse me?
That's actually condition number 1 in Joanne's list.
Oh, I didn't even read that, I'm sorry. Well, then you can take that one off. And shown on the plan. Thank you for showing me that.
You're welcome.
So number 4 becomes add staked hay bales to the silt fence detail. And 5 becomes approval conditioned on the shoreline permit.
Are we gonna need is it gonna require a demo permit?
That's not us. We're only talking about the 100 feet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's all we're
I'm getting
talking
ahead
about.
of myself.
That's all the application is for, right? Relief from the outer 50? Yep.
With that point, though, I think that the note on the plan that erosion control is gonna be installed prior to construction, that would be prior to demolition of the existing building, I would assume as well, or we have,
Well, construction is through the building department, so I think that I don't think we can really make demands.
Well, the reason why I brought it up is sometimes people don't realize you need a demo permit.
Well,
Yeah,
that's-
you do
that's-
need a demo permit through the building department.
The building department will tell them that.
Well, sometimes they,
All right, well,
Demo
it's- they folks have heard you say so, so now they know. Thank you. Anything else for the applicant or for or our staff?
Joanne, can I just ask, for procedurally, a motion on this? I think the ordinance says that we need a finding that the functions, values, conditions of the wetlands will not be impacted, so does that need to be?
That should have a separate vote, yes.
Okay.
Separate vote on what?
That the functions and values, that the findings of the functions and values do not have a negative impact on the lake.
We've never voted on anything like that before, have we?
Yeah, you voted on the functions and values report.
I don't remember that we actually did a separate
No, I don't know, we
vote.
actually did ever.
No?
Just because when we approve, because they're asking for relief, and so approval of the relief is de
Part of
facto. You know,
Based on the
that's why I
input.
made the point to state into the record that I
Okay.
reviewed it, and I believe, I
Part
agree
of
with
the motion itself.
right.
So it's based
So
on the-
procedurally, we don't do a separate vote.
It's based on accepting the function and values report.
Correct, right, yes. So,
Thank you. All right.
but that's a good question.
Okay, do we have any other issues that have to be taken care of here, Joanne?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, so board members, what's your pleasure?
I make a motion that we approve or grant relief of from the 100-foot wetland surface water conservation district, as the applicants has provided a functions and values assessment that states that there'll be no impact to the functions and values on the lake, and as to include the conditions 1 through 3 plus the ones Tim added, which were 4, 5, and 6?
Just 4 and 5.
4 and 5. Thank you.
Joanne, you got 4 and 5?
Yes.
Thank you.
And you made an adjustment to 1 as well. Just
Yeah, I added shown on the plan for
I
number
got
1.
that.
Yes.
Second that.
Second by Brian. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, no more yet. Nice, quick.
All right, Joanne, our third new application tonight is from Eversource. Could you please, you don't have map and lot numbers, it's just listed as
goes through lots.
random locations around town?
So I do have map and lots.
Oh, okay. I know you've added them in there at the
So
bottom.
Eversource is coming in before us for a conditional use permit. And that would fall under Articles 13.3.4, 13.3.7, and 13.3.7.1. It's located off of Elm Street, which is map 5, lots 16, 18A, 19, 19-1, and 20, and Goffstown Back Road, map 6, lot 26-1, and 79. So they are planning to replace some more existing poles. They're here to request relief because some of those poles will be either in the wetland itself or the buffer. And so that's why they're here for the conditional use permit. There's actually 32 poles being replaced.
That's the question I was gonna ask, because there's about 40 pages of maps back there that I don't wanna go through.
And there's 32 poles, and the project begins at Greg Falls Substation.
And goes in which direction?
And it goes off of Mass Road and ends up at the Rimmon Substation off of Riverview Park. So it goes across the river and then down the back road.
Okay.
They're existing poles, and they'll be replaced with weathered steel poles. They will have 18,490 square feet of temporary wetland impact, and they will be using timber mats within the wetland area as they do this work, which they will then remove when completed. So the application is complete and there's no regional impact.
Motion from somebody?
I make a motion that we,
Complete, ready for review, no regional impact.
the application, yes, as Tim said.
I'll second it.
And there's no waiver request, right, Joanne?
No.
Okay. So Kimberly and Phil. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes. Any questions from board members for Joanne? Public Works weighing in on this?
Just the same comments that I've had on all of these driveway permits where they're adding new road or a new access point, which I drove them. I'm not actually sure they're gonna need any on this, but,
Okay.
and then there was something else, what was it?
All right, so nothing outstanding.
The DMP, monitoring reports.
Okay. So we're all set here, so we'll ask you folks to identify yourselves for the record, please.
Lindsay White with GZA.
Jeremy Fennell, Eversource.
Could you say your last name again, Jeremy?
Fennell.
Fennell, thank you.
Fennell.
So please begin.
Yeah, so this is a fairly routine maintenance project, similar to ones that you've seen previously. It's a different corridor, the J114 corridor. It's, I believe, a single transmission line through this corridor. As Joanne mentioned, it starts at Greg's substation, heads easterly and then southerly over to the Rimmon substation. We're replacing about 32 poles, as mentioned. It does require access and work pads at each of those poles, as well as some additional smaller poles in order to support optical ground wire replacement work. So Eversource is planning to replace the existing static wire with optical ground wire. It's another activity we've come to you with you before, and that's to shield the underlying conductor wires during storms. So you will see the 32 poles that are being replaced have the larger work pads around those. And then some of the poles that aren't being replaced will still have a small work pad around those just to give ground access during that optical ground wire work. To get to the poles and where we have to do wetland crossing, we'll use the temporary timber matting as mentioned. Once work is complete, that will be removed. The work is proposed to start in this July and proposed restoration in the winter timeframe, 2024.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you just replace a whole bunch of steel poles down through there 4 or 5 years ago? We gave permission to start at the Greg's Fall Dam and cut down behind DPW and behind Podger's yard. Those are all brand new steel poles. Is that the area you're talking about?
Yeah, it's not exactly the same area, so those were, poles on an adjacent transmission line.
That's a different line. That's not the one you're talking about working on.
Well, we have worked on this line before, but
Yeah.
not the same poles. So we're not replacing those poles.
Those new
the
ones you
same-
put in.
Yeah, no,
Alright.
if that's where you're going with that question.
Yeah, because I remember you
Yeah.
came in here a while ago, got
Yeah.
permission to do them.
I've been in front of this board multiple times.
Yeah.
Since 2018, so.
Okay.
These are the ones that go down by
Just a couple
the
times.
new fields, which aren't in this, so the new fields are down here.
I'm looking at the ones that come off of they come along and they go past Podger's yard.
Podgers is back here.
Oh,
So
okay,
that's
that's
this-
above it.
This line.
All right, never mind.
There are a
Different one.
lot of transmission lines in Goffstown.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know. Because you come in all the time and want permits.
Distribution lines, transmission lines,
Yeah.
yes.
Thanks to, what's his name, Johnson.
So Tim and Kimberly, at the Conservation Commission meeting last night, we asked them to conduct a vernal pool survey. That's for you, Kimberly.
Okay. So they did not do the vernal pool survey during
They
the...
said that, I think, as I recall, he said there may or may not be one. They weren't entirely sure, but if I'm misspeaking, both, clarify.
That was,
And so the thought was, well, if there's one, are there others? You gotta do a survey of the whole,
Yeah, definitely.
I believe we do have the
So
potential.
did they agree to do that at the Conservation Commission meeting, or were they not present?
yeah, they were,
They were present.
yes, they were.
And what was,
Yep.
and they agreed to do the vernal pool study? Okay.
Because when were the wetlands mapped? I don't see it noted on the plan sheets.
So these were, whenever we get a project, even if we have existing data, we do go out and do the wetland confirmation work, just to verify those lines. And so that was done in, I believe it was October 2022. And so at that time, we would have looked for potential vernal pools, and I do see the symbology for those.
Just for everybody's knowledge, when is a vernal pool visible? Year-round or certain times of the year?
So you can look
Spring.
in the spring for identification, but if you see a depression that would look like a pool that would be flooded in the spring, we usually call those out as potential vernal pools. But for official confirmation, that would be done in the April to June timeframe.
So that would be something you'd have to get on right away if you're gonna do this in July.
Yes.
Okay.
So you actually, in your fishing game notes, it says vernal pools and potential vernal pools shall be flagged and impact shall be avoided, and buffers of 50 feet shall be maintained.
Yep, and so we do that to the potential vernal pools as well. We treat them as vernal pools when we go out and do confirmation, and we don't have the opportunity to do vernal pool confirmation. We treat the potential vernal pools as vernal pools. So I do see one that is mapped, and it's by structure 28 on page 4 of the plan sets. We do utilize an existing access road that's near it, but otherwise we would be buffering that 50 foot around that fishing game requires.
Any other questions for the applicants from any board member? So we, if no one has questions, we should move on to the conditional use permit requirements in the zoning ordinance 1541 through 46. Would anybody like to waive the reading of the conditional use permit?
Do we do the public hearing first, or we do this first?
Yeah. Usually, we don't grant them without talking about them.
Okay, I waive reading of the conditional
Yeah,
use
I'll
permit
second that.
conditions.
Look at their position on it before we open up the public hearing. So the motion to waive the reading of the conditional use permit by Collis, seconded by Kimberly. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? So, do we have their answers somewhere around here?
In the GZA packet, pages 4 and 5. They're
Oh,
right
the
there behind the
ZBA?
letter.
Everybody have a chance to look at them? Because I didn't. Never even took this off. 4 and 5?
Yes.
So we can do the short version of this tonight and just ask them for yes and no answers without without the full text being read that they've supplied us with? Everybody okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. So who's gonna answer? You?
Sure.
Okay. The use is specifically authorized in the ordinance as a conditional use?
Yes.
If completed as proposed by the application, the development on its proposed location will comply with all the requirements of the section and the specific conditions or standards established in this ordinance for the particular use.
Yes.
Okay. The use be compatible with the neighborhood and the adjoining abutting uses in the area which is located.
Yes.
The use will not have a substantial adverse impact on vehicular or pedestrian safety.
Yes.
The use will not have a substantial adverse impact on the appearance and visual quality of the surrounding neighborhood. In evaluating the impact, the planning board may consider architectural and design elements.
Yes.
And the use will be adequately served by public utilities. You are the
Absolutely.
public utility. All right. So we got their affirmative answers to the terms and conditions of the conditional use permit. At this time, if no one else has any more questions for you, I am going to open the public hearing, so you can stay right there until we find out if someone else is going to step up. Is anyone here, I'm going to open the public hearing, is anyone here to speak in regards to this application? I'm seeing no's in the back. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Board members, talk about this application.
Well, I would state, because I think it's important for us to put on the record that I did review the conditional use permit findings as presented by the applicant in the GZA report, and I would agree that the answers that they have provided are appropriate for replacement of poles within a maintained and existing right-of-way, and I don't see any concerns with granting the conditional use permit.
Okay, and then we move on to the Wetlands Function and Values Assessment, which is in page 11 of our packet. Since you are our resident wetlands aficionado, do we have to have any discussion on this, or do we accept it as it is presented?
So I did read that section of the report, and I find that they, I agree with the, what is proposed as stated, that there will not be an adverse effect on the functions and values by granting relief from the outer 50-foot of the wetland or surface water buffer.
And the applicant has stated that in the record that they are going to do a vernal pool assessment. Correct? Is that related to wetlands function and values? Vernal pools?
Yeah, we would add that to the
Conditions of
to
approval.
the condition of approval. And more importantly, if a vernal pool is found and identified, they will have to get a permit from New Hampshire DES to impact that vernal pool. So, and the Army Corps. So then we just did this and I swear I forget. Do we have to vote on the conditional use permit and then the conditions of approval? Or do we vote on
No,
the
conditions of,
because it's a conditional use permit.
the conditions of approval are part of the approval.
Okay. Good thing I paid attention.
Tim, I can tell you, at last night's Conservation Commission meeting, we did talk about pest management practices. When they're using these timber mats, I always like to see a filter fabric underlying the timber mats. We've gone back and forth on this, that's just my preference, and I think they agreed that they would in fact do that.
You shaking your head, yes?
I agree
Filter
with
fabric will
that.
be under the,
Under the timber mats.
Just
Filter
Right.
fabric.
filter.
So that's the sediment comes through the timber mats.
anything else we're adding for conditions at this time? So I've written down 2 additional conditions related to the approval, which starts on page 12. I wrote the applicant will identify and locate the vernal pools in the appropriate seasonal months and show them on the plan, Kimberly? And show on plan.
How do we state that? If vernal pools are identified,
Well-
the plan needs to be updated. If no vernal pools are identified, we don't need it.
Right.
I understand that, but they said they're gonna physically go out and look at them again in the
Right.
correct season, so I'm just making that part of the record.
Okay, great.
And filter fabric we place under all timber mats during construction. Any other conditions people want to add to this approval before we conclude our discussions? We haven't got any abutters. We did the criteria for the CUP.
Wait, I have a question.
Please?
I have a question. Scott, can you elaborate on a condition number 6, environmental compliance monitoring reports shall be sent to DPW after each site visit? What is that?
That is a comment that I have copied over since before I was here.
Do we know what those reports are for or why, how we
No,
use
and
them?
honestly, I don't know why I keep copying them over.
Does it need to be done, Scott?
I don't believe so.
So you've never reviewed them?
No, I haven't received any, honestly, so.
Well, let's go back to the applicant. Do you do environmental monitoring on your projects during the course of the project?
We do, yes. We do it on a weekly basis to comply with the NIPD's stormwater pollution prevention planning.
And who do you have to send those reports to?
We keep them on file. If they're asked through the EPA, then we are able to supply them, but it's not something that we
There's no
distribute to the team.
reporting requirement to DES.
No, not for that.
So if DES doesn't want them,
Do you want to review weekly reports?
Not really.
I think
But
we
they're-
can strike condition
but
number
they're
6.
available
They're-
upon request.
they're
Yeah, I guess
available.
I could always.
Yeah, it's not like we don't generate enough paper, right?
So we're gonna strike comment 6 if everyone's in, condition 6, everyone's in agreement. So you don't have to do monthly reports to DPW now.
Sounds good.
Yeah, one less thing. All right, board members.
Make a motion to approve, per the conditions one.
Grant the conditional use permit?
And grant the conditional use permit, thank you. Conditions 1 through 5, we struck 6, so 7 and 8 are now 6 and 7, and then Tim added 2 more.
How many conditional use permits are there, Joanne, for this application? One, a single one to cover all of them? Okay. Conditional permit 4.
I'll second that.
I wish you could do one for the whole entire town and be done with it.
For Eversource projects.
Yeah.
It's not a bad
Wishful
idea.
thinking,
All
yeah.
right.
I know it's expensive for them to do this, but I appreciate their effort.
Sure, we'll see you back here in like a month or two.
1 month, another project. Yeah.
See, that's where the higher ups make the decisions.
And as always, we commend GZA, good report, very thorough.
All right, we have a motion to grant the conditional use permit for this project on a motion from Kimberly, second by Brian. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes. Thank you for coming in, thank you for waiting.
Thank you.
You couldn't have waited like a week to do Glen Lake though, because no, the long weekend, you got the concrete barriers.
Oh. I'm not involved in that.
Oh, you're not in there.
We gave permission for that about a month ago, as I remember. Or 2 months ago.
That one was, I think it's like 2 projects combined.
Well, you guys were all here for the same team?
We are.
Oh. Have a good night.
Half the project team.
Out the door.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks, good night.
All right, we have on our table tonight a directive, or what do you call this thing? Correspondence. Correspondence from Derek Horn, our town administrator, to the planning board, and the Concom. From Adam Jacobs, Public Works, Land Acquisition Review. Could somebody tell us what this is about?
I can.
Please do.
So, ahead of our West Union project, we are undertaking East Union, and that's happening this summer. We actually did kind of a final walkthrough today with our construction team.
What are they doing there today? Were they putting a water line in or something?
Yeah, Goffstown, or Goffstown Village Water Precinct is down there, replacing the existing water main ahead of us. So one of the upgrades to East Union is going to be to kind of, and this picture doesn't include it because this is just the land acquisition plan, but
That's all we care about.
the road, instead of it coming in at this sharp angle, it's actually going to kind of swoop out
Straighten it out.
and then come in more 90 degrees to South Mast, and that's going to allow the buses to turn a lot easier.
Yep.
At the same time, along with improving, with rebuilding East Union, we're going to actually add a sidewalk all the way from South Mass Street to the rail trail here, just beyond the property, the subject parcel, and then
Yeah.
all the way to the sidewalk in front of the East Union pump station, where the sidewalk currently exists today.
You mean all the way down past the bus company, you're putting a sidewalk the whole distance?
Yeah, I mean, it drops off where they have their big openings, because we
I was
can't,
gonna
I say,
say,
how are you gonna
Yeah.
manage that?
yeah.
so, I mean, it's not a ton of sidewalk, but what this will do is we're
Connect
actually
it.
making this sidewalk 8 feet, so it can be a multi-use path, so the bicycles on the rail trail don't have to go on the road. So we're connecting technically the 2 pieces of the rail trail, even though the one at the other end is not very long, but.
And explain people should know why you're connecting, because there's a big portion they don't own behind the bus company.
Correct, yes,
Privately
so
owned.
the bus company owns
The old
apparently
Boston
they
and Maine
purchased,
Railroad.
yeah, they purchased it before the town was able to, and I don't know why there's never been an agreement to try and get it, but
They use it.
They use it?
Yeah, for parking and
Oh,
their business,
okay.
it's
Yeah.
for their
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
That's true, I didn't even, I know there's a section that still
So
exists.
it's a good effort to connect the rail trail for safety reasons, so people aren't walking in.
Correct, yep.
Yep.
Good.
And so, Mr. Parkhurst here at 81 South Mast, we met with him. We showed him these plans. The select board has made an offer, a monetary offer for this, and they're just seeking, I think we're just seeking
This
comments,
is, they're looking for a
right?
recommendation.
Recommendations.
Right.
Board members, what's board members think about this?
I think it's good.
Looks great.
Okay, who wants to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Go ahead, Phil.
I'll make a motion to recommend that they go forward with the purchase.
I'll second.
And this is from Mr. Parkhurst lot?
Yep.
Provided Brad wears a shirt when he mows the lawn.
Okay, motion to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that we recommend the acquisition of the land, parcel 30-46. Phil made it, Kimberly seconded it. Anybody want to discuss the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
We have one abstention, for the record.
Do we
Okay,
have a majority of? 1, 2,
There's
3.
four.
Yeah, we do.
so that's out of the way.
We're gonna actually improve the drainage on South Mast here that we were talking about last year too, so.
Oh, good.
We put a lot of money into the drainage out by the bus company, because there's a big vortex unit out there in the woods.
There is, yeah, we're
Yeah.
tying into it. It's
I
not
know
actually
about
in the
that.
woods, it's in the road.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a couple things under other business we're gonna talk about. One is, I asked Scott if he could give us a brief report on the Gary Medical Center's dilemma down there with the parking lot and how that's going along, and if that's been corrected to the DPW satisfaction. The floor is yours.
It has not, they have not come back yet this spring, so I went on site this morning to confirm that nothing has been done, to find they did, put their white spray paint down for their dig safe.
Let's back up. They went in and did the repairs to the drainage in the winter.
Correct, the repairs to the
And
drainage.
that was done to your satisfaction?
Yes, they're still, they only did a temporary pavement patch.
Right.
The inspection port covers weren't concreted in per the plan, so
Okay.
I informed them that that's no good. They wobble, that's ridiculous. They still have landscaping, there's still plantings to do. There's some cleanup of, they kind of dug out the swale, or not the swale, it was a berm that they dug out to alleviate the puddle at the end of the driveway.
On Mr.
We
Parker's
we
one.
will actually be fixing, we're putting 2 catch basins right at the end of that driveway with the new project. So there won't be a puddle there anymore.
When are you doing that project, just off the top of your head?
When are we doing it?
Yeah.
Hopefully the second school ends.
Good, because everybody can avoid Mast Road that way. So,
So another thing was, the catch basin in the rear and the Hill House's
The
property.
plastic one?
the one,
No, it's not, the cover's all fixed, yeah.
Oh,
that's-
okay.
So there was the one on, it may be on Mr. Hillhouse's property or not. But I talked to Mike this morning, and he hasn't noticed any issues since it was cleaned out, but he wanted to emphasize, which I think we have to the applicant, that they need to maintain that structure. It should probably be vac yearly. But he hasn't noticed any issues.
have they received a CO for that? Well, they already had a CO, because it's a
They're
pre-existing
there.
business.
Yeah.
This was
Right,
a
they
modification to the
didn't
site.
actually need one.
So I reached
Because
out
they
this
re-
morning and they said he plans to start the week after next, so not this coming week, but the following week is when they plan to come back to complete the work.
Please tell them that they need to get the landscaping done, because we're not gonna go through that same dilemma where they don't plant at
Yeah.
the right time of the year, because there's only 2 planting times that they can plant. Otherwise,
Yeah,
stuff doesn't grow. So
yeah, we have that.
stress that we want it done this year. Do
Yeah,
we have
and-
any teeth with this applicant, Joanne? I mean, can
We
we
have
request a
teeth.
bond
No,
or
we didn't
anything at
have
this
it.
point?
That
Too
was the
late,
whole
right?
issue. That was the whole issue.
We don't have a bond,
We
right?
had nothing.
Right.
No, but I think Scott pushing them, because now is the planting time, so.
Well, that's what I was getting to. Do
I
we
think-
want-
Well, I
Versus
CC'd
take-
you on my emails with Chris today,
I
right?
saw that.
So his response to my question was basically just when are you starting again to complete the project? And he said, we're gonna come finish the paving and the concrete dumpster pad. So I sent him back a longer email and said, it's not just the paving, it's this, and
And
this.
he said he wasn't aware of the plantings.
Oh, he's responded to my email? I didn't see that
Yeah,
yet.
he
Okay.
said, but it would be taken care
Yeah.
of, but he said he wasn't aware.
Yeah,
of
there's
it.
a line of, I can't remember what they
Whatever.
are off the top of my head, between him and Brad
Your hand up,
Parkhurst's
or you
property.
Where is the owner on this? The owner was here.
The owner's never been here. He sent his
Oh, the
lawyer once
architect,
and
I'm sorry.
no, it's the property maintenance guy, that Chris
And,
Nickerson.
and Matt from,
Matt,
Oh,
from,
That's the engineer.
yeah,
the
Engineer.
engineer, that's, okay.
and
Yeah.
he,
Oh, yeah,
Matt Peterson.
Matt Peterson,
Yeah.
thank you.
Right, but he was here and he was pretty adamant.
Oh, he was very
Yeah, he
adamant.
was
Yeah.
upset.
yeah.
So where is he on this?
I don't know.
Adamant at the meeting and in his
Okay.
I
office
mean,
during the week.
he's, he can't do the work for them, so I don't know.
I like Matt, but
Yeah,
what's he gonna do?
yeah, there's not much he can do.
He has no real leverage.
Yeah.
It's the people with the leverage is Derry Medical Center, because they're the ones that are paying for this. And we did not revoke the site plan. We called them back in for a site plan revocation hearing because things weren't done.
Well, I thought that's why Matt was upset, because of the possibility of revocation, and
Of course
he
he
was
was upset.
directly involved in it.
We
So-
never did. We gave him a second chance to go back and finish it.
Yeah, well, and he was also upset because the contractor, the installation of the underground
Wasn't
drainage
done
system
correctly.
was just poorly done and not per his
Yeah, right,
design,
it wasn't
so.
per the plan.
Right.
Yeah.
And we also learned that we cannot accept pictures from contractors anymore. We have to have visual
Yeah, so-
inspections by Public Works.
Yeah, and in his instance, he did it on a weekend, so he,
That's a
if they
convenient
wanna do
excuse.
that now, they're, what we had them do, cause they wanted to do the rework on a weekend, so they paid to have
VHB.
VHB with them that entire day, so that'll be, if they wanna work on a
That's
weekend,
standard
that's.
operating procedure
yeah.
from now on.
So it sounds like, so if they aren't meeting the conditions or the requirements of the site plan, by statute, the only authority we have is to revoke the approval. So I guess, I mean, Scott, if you continue to work with them and they're not, or to
It's a
to
gray
begin
area
the-
because it was
yeah.
not,
It was already occupied.
what was it listed as? A
Yeah.
modification to the site plan?
Yes, an amendment to
An
the site
amendment to
plan.
the
And
site
so
plan.
it was the doctor's office was
Yeah.
there, and the only change was in the parking area.
Okay.
And the site itself, not the building.
These are
So-
lessons learned
Yeah.
for future applicants in this case.
And I think going forward, and I know that the regulations, we're looking at updating and HTA's doing that review. That might be something to, codify in our regulations that we require a bond for, whether it's just a bond for the landscaping or a bond for, stabilization of the site, or it could be that going forward, that's.
The gray
something to
area
look
is,
at.
Colleen, we either bond everybody or we trust people and we don't bond them. Because we
Yeah.
can't,
You can't pick and
bond
choose.
everybody.
Yeah,
Sure.
It becomes a burden,
yeah.
hardship. So I'm glad you got that report, Scott. Thank you for doing it. Does anybody have any questions for Scott on that matter? None. Okay. Second matter tonight is Kimberly Peace sent an email to myself regarding the, and Joanne, and Patty also. You took correspondence with
And
Patty.
Scott.
I was at CC.
You were in that too?
Yep.
Okay. And I'd like to turn the floor over to Kimberly to state what you would like, what you think needs to be done and how you want to handle things, but I don't want to have a long discussion about it because it's not a notice agenda item.
Sure,
So please, the floor is yours.
So, there is a business across the street from me, recognizing I am in a butter. The Walton Farm has started selling mulch and landscaping materials. When I brought this up 2 meetings ago, with the recognition that I missed the last meeting because I was on vacation, we recognized it wasn't on the agenda, and I had concerns that this is a business that is operating in an agricultural zone, so much like what we looked at for the wedding event venue today. I understand that they came into Joanne, they asked about it. Joanne, you considered this to be an expansion of agricultural use. Procedurally, what I'd like the board to do is put this on our agenda for a discussion of what we should do. I disagree with Joanne's assumption that this is an expansion of agricultural use. I believe that it is creating a retail business in a location where it's not allowed per our table of use in the agricultural zone. So we should either need them to address it through zoning or come in for a site plan, with a site plan and do a site review, so that we have that on record as to, you know, hours of operation, location of parking, et cetera, that we would normally do for a site plan. So procedurally, that's what I had requested, you know, again, with the acknowledgement that I'm in a butter, but I think, you know, it's important to me that the zoning requirements and all the work that we do to have zoning in our town needs to be followed. And I don't believe that a mulch business is an expansion of an agricultural use. Now, exactly across the street from them is someone who sells plants. She has a little operation. I've never seen more than one other car in her driveway. I would assume that it's not a retail business.
The home occupation probably.
Right. And our farm stand, or, you know, those are the things that are allowed. So procedurally, I would like to have this come up as a discussion as to what we need to ask the applicant to do.
So I would like to inject this statement, Kimberly. I think we need to have a determination by someone from zoning at this point, before we even discuss the matter at the planning board level. I think we need a zoning determination from, if it's Derek, our code enforcement officer at this time, or whoever it isn't, was the decision by Joanne to let them begin doing this, was that a correct decision or was it an incorrect decision? And then, based on the zoning code enforcement's statement, we can either have a discussion because it was incorrect, or we will have, you'd have to file a complaint as a citizen at that point with the town that you feel that that was an incorrect statement, that it was, the interpretation of the zoning law was incorrect. But I really don't think that, unless we have some grounds to discuss this on, I don't think we should discuss it publicly as a board. So that's what I'm concerned with. And I know in your email you mentioned things have been done in the past, and I have been spanked by Barbara and Jim both for bringing things into the discussion that I shouldn't have because it was not a noticed item on our agenda.
Well, I guess
Now,
the point, my point is, I'm not sure that it's the procedure to go through code enforcement. That would be something like, as me as a citizen comes to code enforcement and says, hey, there's something going on across the street, it's super noisy. What I'm questioning is that they came to the town and they said, what do I do? And the town said, we think it's a use and it's okay.
So
that was
we're
my
looking for a determination on Joanne's decision.
Yes.
So I think that needs to come from a town official, not from us, because we're not in a position to make a determination that she made a correct or an incorrect decision. So I think we should kick this back to the code enforcement officer for a look before we put it on our agenda and find out what code enforcement thinks about it. And then if code enforcement says it was a wrong decision, then we can talk about it on our agenda. And if everyone, does anyone disagree with that opinion? Because I want everyone to weigh in on this.
No, I don't disagree with it, Tim, but I think it's appropriate for us to notify code enforcement if we see things that we suspect aren't compliant. And I'm not going to get into this a lot either, but I've got the same concern with what I call Stonehenge on Elm. That seems to grow every week. There's more and more stone displays propping up.
Oh, I know what you mean.
I mean, it's growing literally every week. There's more and more out there, and same vein. Now, again, I understand.
You're back to, was a permit issued for that
Well, I mean,
operation at
yeah.
some point? And that's a code enforcement issue.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to bring it up
I
because
hear you.
it's not part of the meeting, but I'm concerned about that as well.
So does anybody disagree that we should kick this back to code enforcement first and get an opinion from code enforcement? Does that,
I agree, and I think that procedurally then, once they make a written determination, then there's a 30-day appeal period, and then there's a process. That actually would have a set process to, if someone disagrees with the determination, there's the appeal process to go through.
will that be acceptable to you at this time?
I guess to me, I'm still stuck on the issue that the applicant is going to say, well, I came to the town and this is what you told me. So procedurally, Joanne, you know, we've had other decisions that you've made in-house that we've said, no, we'd like to have them come in. So it's not unusual for us to have done that in the past. And so I guess I feel like this one is just slightly different, but if that's the board's consensus to go through the code enforcement officer, then we can certainly do it that way.
I'd like to do it procedurally if we can, and do it by the numbers, and then we can get our teeth out later if we have to get our teeth out later.
Because if we had $1 for every time we were told, well, what, the town told us it was okay. I mean, show me in writing.
We know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this matter for now?
I have something else that's not on the agenda that,
We have one last item on the agenda before you do yours.
okay,
And Brian has requested a discussion on the Pledge of Allegiance. So the floor is yours, Brian.
Yeah, I think it's pretty quick. I mean, I know traditionally you mentioned, Chair, that this board doesn't do the Pledge of Allegiance, but I think as a government entity, I think it should be prudent that we do it in perpetuity. So that's where I came from, so.
Until another board member disagrees and gets a vote in the opposite direction someday down the road.
Could be.
I don't want to vote on it tonight because we don't have a full board tonight.
Sure.
We're missing 2 board members.
Yeah.
Actually, we're missing Barbara. Who else is missing?
David.
David
Gail
as
and Dave.
Yeah, you're missing the
2 alternates, but they don't vote unless someone's not here.
Yeah.
So we're missing Barbara. So I would appreciate waiting for a full board before we make a decision on this matter, because I think all board members should be able to weigh in.
Sure.
I appreciate your waiting for this. It's been 2 hours or more almost. So we're going to do that when we have a full board. So Joanne, the floor is yours.
so Mr. Blood called me today.
It's back.
He's back. And so what he would like to do, I'm just trying to find out what direction he'd
Short and
like to
sweet
go.
now.
So remember when he came in with the plan?
We remember.
And the line kept that
Followed the
property and
stone
that
wall.
portion of the road with his original house. Well, so then, remember when he didn't agree with the board and he said, okay, I'm going to stick with what no.
He agreed with the board that he was going to run the line straight down.
To run the line straight down. And then he called me after that. That's
Yeah.
when I gave you that other memo. And then he changed his mind again. And
He
now
wanted to put it back, in his second plan, he wants to put it where the stone wall is.
correct. So
Okay.
now he's come in again.
And what's he want to do this time?
And he said he would like to stick with what the board wanted to do with closing off the road. In fact, I have some pictures here, he's even added the stone walls at this time, so you can.
So he wants to make the line come straight down as the board agreed to in the beginning.
Yes, and keep the road, extinguish the easement, or not go
Yeah,
with
no
the
easement.
easement.
There is no easement.
Yeah.
The easement he wanted, forget about that.
Yep.
Have the line go straight down where the stone wall and the driveway would be part of the.
The other lot.
The
The
new
parent
lot.
lot.
And then he would close off the road, which he's already
You
done.
gotta fill in the stone wall for the
Wait.
gap.
That's what he's done.
Looks like you put a road.
Did I see on some plan there was an old schoolhouse on that site, or was
Yeah.
that foundation?
It's,
Yeah.
it's
It was
not,
on-
the house itself was moved over next to the Historical Society,
But there's a
but
foundation
the
still?
foundation is there.
Is that a historical site?
I don't know, I think the schoolhouse is historical, I don't know about the foundation.
Okay, just curious, I didn't know if it was on
It is
somebody's.
marked on the plan,
I saw it on the plan.
yeah.
So does the board have any problem with reaffirming our original decision to have the line come straight down if that's what the
So
applicant wants to
can you
do?
clarify, because the board, we had said for the line to follow the stone wall, which was not coming straight down.
No.
The stone wall, wasn't that
No.
coming, I can't
No.
picture
I
that.
have the plan
He wants
here.
he wants to go, he wants it to follow the stone wall now, right? Because
Yes,
he's
Yeah,
closing
and
the
that's what
driveway.
we-
Wait a minute, he said that what the board originally agreed to was have the line come straight down.
right, that's what he wants to do.
Wait a minute, you just
Yeah.
said he wants to
Yeah.
have the phone,
We agreed to following the stone wall.
no, we did not.
Yeah, I think
We
you
av-
agreed to like cut the
We
corner.
avoided to cut it off, the
Yeah.
line from the back part of the parcel was
Okay,
where it came
yeah.
down, and then the wall took a 40-degree angle, so the line was gonna come straight down
Yeah.
and intersect the road, and that little triangle
Yeah.
was gonna remain a part of the parent lot.
Yep.
That's what he wants to do.
He wants to do that now.
Then why is he closing the driveway?
Because the road now from the I'll call it the old house, that that will not be a circular driveway any longer.
Well, it won't be because he doesn't have permission to go through there.
Because
Okay.
and he doesn't have
So
the
he is,
easement.
he is following the,
He's following what the
Stone wall
board
with
had
No.
come up
I don't
with.
think he is, if he wants to close, because I think what you all
Yeah.
decided
I'm so
was,
confused.
if,
Where's the map he gave you to show what he wants?
if the,
Could you pass it around?
if the driveway was to stay, he had to bring it straight down. If he wanted to keep his funky little triangle, then he had to block the driveway off. Which is, I'm guessing he
I don't
wanted.
know if we ever conditioned that he had to close the driveway.
No, I think that's
It was
the,
never a condition of approval.
no, I think you were saying if you want to keep the line on the stone wall, you couldn't have that driveway because you didn't want the easement, because you didn't want to make that corner useless to the owner of the new lot.
We always said that if he was gonna have an easement on that property to go up to his other property on the new owner's land, that rendered that part of the new owner's land useless. They can't
Yeah.
use it for anything.
So the
Exactly.
circular driveway
Goes away.
goes away. It ends at the stone wall.
And where does the lot line intersect Page Hill
The
Road?
stone wall would be the,
So now he wants to
lot
go back to the stone wall being the lot
Right.
line.
What's the?
Right.
That's
Which
not
is-
straight down.
No, it's not.
well, it's,
No, it's not even close to straight down. The original plan that we approved had a line that extended through the back of the parcel
should have
straight
brought
down.
that with me.
We don't need it. All right, well, that's gonna require what do you call it? A, noticed hearing for that.
Okay.
That's a change to an approved site plan. So we'll have to have a noticed hearing, which means he's gonna probably have to pay for the
He'll probably change his mind again.
abutters.
I know.
Wait till he finds out you gotta pay for the abutters, that's gonna cost him a few bucks. So it's gonna have to be a noticed hearing to change that from what we approved.
Well, I think if we look at it, I mean, as a possibility, it's not really a material change.
Well, that would be a decision by the board.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So does the board wanna consider moving the lot line a material change or not? That's the question right now for the board.
Well, I think, I'm just wondering if maybe that should come as a, come to us at the next meeting. For us to make.
So does the applicant have to make that request, or is that something we decide on our own, Joanne? That it's a non-material change?
Well, they requested from me what the board would like to do if he needs to come back, or the board could find that it can be handled administratively.
All right, what we need to do then, for the next meeting, we have to have a copy of the plan that shows the lot line that he's requesting.
Okay.
And at such time, the board can make a decision if it's a non-material change, and should the board decide that, we can act on it that night.
Right.
If the board decides it's a material change, it'll require a hearing.
Yeah, bring us a plan you want us to consider and act on, and we
Yeah.
will.
Right.
And send all the little photographs.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, the plan, Joanne, that he wants us to, that he's gonna show that, he needs to show that the wall is filled in on the plan.
Right, exactly.
Right,
He'll
right.
have to have his surveyor put that on the plan. So I'm happy to do it that way.
I have one thing when you were finished with that.
Are you done with that, Joanne?
Yeah.
Good, Phil, you got the floor.
Thank you. There was several sheets that were passed around at the last meeting that I had read, and there were a couple of things that
Yes.
caught my attention and I brought up. But I did not fully express, because the papers that were being handed around, on the bottom of it said it was confidential.
Confidential.
Okay? And I pointed out to the person who handed it out that you handed out this information in a public meeting, so the documents are technically.
No, they're public documents.
Yeah, they're public documents. Now, that was my understanding why they were handed out, was because the Conservation Commission requested, I don't remember exactly what the wording was, I'd have to look and see what they
NHB check.
They requested some type of a report or something that I wasn't familiar with, okay? And my understanding when they were handed out, that was the response for that information that the Conservation Commission requested. On today's meeting, the packet that we received, I went through it. And I found references in,
Tell us what page. In our packet?
that came out. It's this one from the, is it the wetland scientist?
The Elm Street one.
What project, Phil?
Nothing Aspen?
Second one, the one on the lake,
Okay,
okay?
what-
Weikert's.
and where in the packet are we looking
Okay,
for something?
hang on a second, okay? It's the one from the Aspen Environmental, okay? There's 2 pages that are in there that caught my attention when I was doing my homework, okay?
I can't find, I gotta find it.
Inside, it's this one, and
Picture of the blue lake?
the blue lake on the right-hand side, left-hand side, the document says New Hampshire Natural Heritage Bureau, NHB Data Check Results Letter. And there's a whole bunch of stuff up here in the front, but what caught my attention was the NH Natural Heritage Database has been checked for records of rare species and exemplary natural communities near the area mapped below. The species considered include those that listed as threatened or endangered by either the state of New Hampshire or the federal government. We currently have no recorded occurrences for sensitive species near this project area. And then I'm going to skip the next paragraph, but the last sentence says, based on the information submitted, no further consultation with the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department pursuant to FIS 1004 is required. Now, those documents that were passed around had a statement on it. One of them was an endangered species.
But it's not for this application.
No.
Okay.
But I'm getting the connect. I've never seen what was passed around. My interpretation of why it was passed around, because that was the response for the question of some report the Conservation Commission wanted that I had never heard of. Okay? And in reading this, I connected this because they mentioned threatened or endangered.
Yeah, I
Those
remember.
sheets, one of sheet was an endangered species, another sheet was a threatened species.
It's 2
Okay.
snakes, right? 2 different kinds of snakes.
Oh,
Maybe a
yeah,
snake.
Or turtles.
There were
Yeah.
different animals, okay, the species. But the point is, one of them was endangered, and there was something in there about something to contact Fish and Game, okay? Now, when you go further on in this report, okay, towards the back on page, I don't know if it's the same report, but page 27, and it says, the top says visual quality aesthetics. When you get down to the bottom, endangered species habitat. This value considers the suitability of the wetland to support threatened or endangered species. Considerations, qualifiers. Wetland contains or is known to contain threatened or endangered species. Wetlands contains critical habitat for a state of federally listed threatened or endangered species. Now, I'm not familiar with this. This is all new to me. So I have information that was passed around because of the wetlands that the project was, and the Conservation Commission requested a report. That information was passed out. From what my questioning now is, this report says that what I understand this report is that they looked in their files and they had none of those sheets that had those threatened or endangered species. Well, what happens if they did have threatened or endangered species? How would it affect this report? And my question is what was passed out at the last meeting in response to the requested report, was that just the documents that are in the file, or were they, the Conservation Commission, requesting a report that was like this, that goes back into the file and gets this and makes some kind of a determination? So what brings it, comes to forward in my mind, if this did have endangered and threatened species, how would it affect this report in this application that we had in front of us? I don't know the answer, but I'm just,
I do.
well,
So, let me try to clear this up. So when you have a parcel of land, you want to do something on it for any permitting purposes. New Hampshire Natural Heritage Bureau has an online mapping tool. You can either upload a shapefile or you can draw your project on there. And then they give you this letter, and it looks exactly like the one that we have here. They give you a letter from NHB. It's called the Data Check Response Letter. And wherever it is.
Is that the one I read
Yeah,
at
yes,
first?
the one-
That's what you read.
Yes, that's the
Okay.
one. And it looks, and so when they have searched their records and they feel like there is nothing on your site of consequence, or they think the project is not gonna have an impact on listed species habitat, they send you that letter. So that letter basically, it comes with a map and it basically shows here's your land and here's your square.
Right, I understand,
Right.
I'm following you.
So when you get a nothing, you don't have to do anything. Sometimes you get a letter that says, we've found records of habitat on or near your parcel, and there's a map, and it'll have like a circle, and it'll be green snake, for example, circle, northern black racer, maybe those are what you're talking about. That is considered confidential information because they don't want people, for example, to go out and find the listed species. They don't want people to go hunt for them.
Right.
And so in that situation, when we apply for a permit or when we put a report out, we would tell you, like GZA did in their report, they checked with NHB, they had these
Right.
species listed, they don't include the map. So that's why that's confidential information, and technically it probably should not have even been handed out to the group, but I mean, it's not like it's world-class FBI, you know, it's confidential because they don't want people chasing it around. Now, should you be handing it out to a Concom? Okay, for discussion. Should you put it in an application that becomes public record? Probably not. So there's a little bit of a gray area to it. Now, what you're asking about is how would that affect this report? You're right. This Appendix A, what Aspen did was they basically said, if you don't understand how to read our tables, these are the rules that we go through to fill out these tables. And if you'll notice, yes, they did talk about, is there endangered species habitat? And they checked no, because they got an NHB letter that said no. So that's kind of how we play this game.
Right.
So in the project that you guys are talking about, if they got an NHB letter back that they had to then work with Fish and Game to address the conditions, they probably got a map and it probably said confidential, so they wouldn't want to include that in any formal permit applications. But they might have brought it to you to hand out at the meeting to say, here's what we're talking about, and they probably collected it maybe at the end of the meeting. I don't know. I don't know if that's
I
actually the
don't think
case.
they did.
No.
So you're probably not supposed to put it in your reports or permit applications, but you know, again, it's not like it's
discoverable.
FBI's.
It's
Right,
all discoverable.
you know, it's,
You know, and a response that says there's a known occurrence is not necessarily a death knell to a project either. And I'll give you an example, bald eagle. They'll say, you know, we've got a documented occurrence of a bald eagle in your project area. Well, that doesn't mean the project can't move forward. It just means that they have to go to Fish and Game and take precautions, maybe modify
Okay.
their project to provide protections to bald eagles. So Fish and Game will say, well, you can't do work in their breeding season, and you have to stay so many feet away from known roosting trees. So you know, there is a give and take back and forth
So-
to modify the project to address.
like in the Eversource, they listed the species that were provided, and then they're going to be doing, you know, monitoring and you know, education of contractors, and there's all, there are great pictures in here of what they'll hand out to the contractor, say, hey, keep an eye on this turtle. If you find this turtle, you have to report it to the state. That kind of thing.
All right, so are we good?
Well, it's just that I don't know if all the information was addressed at the other meeting when those sheets were handed out, because I did not see a report. The letter that had the report, it was the sheets.
So that application was the Tenny Road one that
Right.
you're talking about. So they aren't actually showing wetland impacts on their plan, so they don't have to go through the wetland permit process. So he was explaining that he did the NHB check as like
Okay.
it was a request of Concom.
Well,
that
no,
was
it's
the whole-
required in our new rules.
What's that?
If they ask for relief, or if they're coming in for the
Okay.
buffer impacts, they have to do it,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so if
Which I
the
don't recall if
response,
they were
if the
requesting that.
response was there's one endangered species and there's one threatened species, it's just a report, is what you said.
Well, they have to then report back to Fish and Game. If the bottom of the letter says, this species is listed, you need to explain to us how you're gonna avoid, minimize, or conserve that habitat. And they'll do something like, for turtles and snakes, for example, what we do is we say, okay, if you're working in nesting habitat, you give the pictures to the contractor has to notify the state, everybody needs to keep an eye out for these individual organisms, if you see one, you turn it in, that sort of thing.
I understand, but I didn't see any kind of a letter like that, so I don't even know if that was
Yeah.
done, or
So-
they just pulled these sheets down and give them, you said, here's what you're looking for, and it's not really what you're looking for.
So Kim,
I'm just a little, this is all new, I'm not familiar with this, and I'm seeing this, and now I'm seeing a letter here, and that letter it seems
Colleen, you
different,
get the last
Yeah.
statement of the night on
I
the
think maybe
subject.
part of the disconnect, Kim, maybe if it's if our regulations are requiring they do the NHB check, and so now we know that there are some rare and endangered species. If there's a state permit required, the state's gonna put those conditions and maybe, have, monitoring and have the pictures. So maybe it's just that in order to kind of close the loop on that if there are endangered or threatened or potential impacts, that we as a planning board or the Conservation Commission would make recommendation for conditions on monitoring. So maybe if there's not a state permit, then that's gonna be a recommendation that comes from the CONSCOM. So there's not a full report, we're not getting the full functions and values, but the CONSCOM's now aware that there's a rare species, and they might make recommendation to us or conditions to include
Right,
that.
great.
I'd like to conclude this if everyone's.
Yeah, no,
okay.
I just,
Good,
I
thank
saw
you.
this and I saw this, and
All right,
I'm
that
not
was the
connected
last
to
word.
stuff.
Who's gonna make the motion?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Just so you know,
Motion to shut
the
up.
two applicants from the last meeting that wanted to come to this meeting
No,
and then were
next meeting.
pushed out to June 8th, they are
Not
now
ready.
asking for continuations to June
Yeah,
22nd.
'cause we knew they couldn't get their stuff done in time.
So,
Who seconded
no
Phil's
matter what
motion?
they tell you, they need more time.
Yeah.
All right, so we like that, so, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Thank you, GTV, we're done.